Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you have a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of You May Not Be Getting Screwed. I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and today I want to discuss something that I think is really cool that came out of the city of Austin. I have talked a lot about this AI surveillance cameras in parks, which I am against, and many of you are against as well, including BlackBerry, which is why she is raw-woing right now. Raw-wow? She always does raw-wowing the moment I hit start record. Anyway, this is an amendment for mobile security trailer and monitoring services. They're going to spend $2 million to have AI cameras in the parks, which I'm not a fan of for a number of reasons. I like my privacy, and I like the idea of not being watched by Bonzi Buddy or ChatGPT on a telephone pole everywhere that I go. I think that's kind of weird, and I don't like that that's kind of taken over the United States. Now, if you go down to item 61, approve a resolution directing the city manager to return to council with an ordinance regulating the city's use of surveillance technology. Mayor Pro Tem Jose Chito Vela, Council Member Mike Siegel, Councilmember Vanessa Fuentes, Councilmember Crystal Lane, Councilmember Jose Velasquez are involved and sponsors of this. And I did have a 1-hour interview with Mike Siegel. Wherever we ever disagreed on how to spend money in the city of Austin, one item where we are 100% in agreement, and I support him very much, is that wasting $2 million on having AI surveillance and having ChatGPT on a telephone pole in a park is a waste of money and a bad idea. There are much better ways to deal with our problems than spend $2 million to have ChatGPT watch us everywhere that we go. When I go to a park, I don't want to be watched by an AI surveillance camera. I think that's kind of fucking weird. And I just no, enough of this stuff. Now, they came up with something called the Trust Act. And there's two things I like about this. First, I like a lot of how it's written, but more importantly, I like the fact that they're actually open input. Mackenzie, who you've seen in many of these videos, has had back and forth with people on city council, and they actually took a lot of what she had to say into account as they have revised this as time goes on. I want to highlight the people that are actually against the type of mass surveillance. That's why I did that 1-hour interview with Mike Siegel, because I want you to hear from the horse's mouth themselves that it's not all of them that support this. And we should support the people in city council that don't support this. So the Trust Act has a lot of interesting items in it. The first item that was of large concern in earlier revisions was that it allowed for emergency exemptions. And the problem with emergency exemptions, regardless of where you are on the political aisle, I'm sure at some point in time you have seen a politician declare something an emergency that you're just thinking, like, nobody on my side thinks this is an emergency. You're using that just to grab power, and that is very, very annoying. We've seen a lot of that over the past 5 years, 10 years. And if you have these types of emergency exemptions and carve-outs, it doesn't actually matter if you have some sort of policy on the use of surveillance technology. They're just going to use the exemption and bulldoze whatever they want, right? 6A6, 6A7. Exigent circumstances must be for specific investigative or public safety purposes and not mere convenience. Standard city public safety policies or goals, including but not limited to general crime reduction, traffic safety, or routine law enforcement activities alone, shall not qualify as an exigent circumstance. This is great. So this prevents any sort of surveillance technology from just having some sort of emergency declared so we can use it all the time. But more importantly, the city council actually listened to people and decided to update this accordingly, which is a good thing. I think this is a very, very positive thing, and it needs to be highlighted. It says it must be stopped when the emergency stops. Section 6A, number 2, the city department ceases use of surveillance technology when the exigent circumstances end. 6A3, the city department keeps and maintains only data related to the exigent circumstances, which shall not be shared with or disclosed to any other person or entity unless and only to the extent required for an ongoing investigation, and dispose of any data that is no longer necessary for an investigation, legal process, or audit. Great. There is a ban on facial recognition and data harvesting. A provision that the following surveillance technologies or data uses are not permitted: facial recognition technology, artificial intelligence or machine learning tools inconsistent with city policy, and collection of data for marketing purposes, product development purposes, or any other use that is not necessary to fulfill the terms of the contract, but is instead related to the vendors or other third parties' own interests. Now, one thing that Mike Siegel had mentioned is that there are companies that may be able to underbid other companies because they are using that data for other reasons, and this essentially just sticks a knife into that business model, which is great. The problem is, how are you going to audit that? How do you see what the company is doing with data that is on their server? Which brings me to why the AI cameras in parks are still something that I would 100% vote no on. Because, again, I like that you have this. I like that you can get the vendor in trouble. I like that you can say they can break the law and get rid of their contract if they're found doing this. But this is one of those cases where you'd have to see what the company is doing with that data. You would have to rely on a whistleblower at that company potentially to say that, hey, they're actually doing this, and the likelihood of that happening is, and that opens up its own can of worms altogether. Further, if a federal agency wants the ability to get access to the data, if there's a warrant, they can get access to the data. And as I said in the video that I did on that telephone carrier, the best way to ensure that your data is never shared, is never harvested, is never used in some way, is if you don't collect it in the first place. So voting no on the AI camera initiative, in my opinion, is the best way to ensure that that data is not collected in the first place. There are many ways to deal with this that do not involve spending $2 million of taxpayer money. Austin could not pass Prop Q. It was one of the first times in over a decade that the people voted no, not just normal no, but overwhelmingly no. Over 66% voted no on a tax increase. now is not the time to be trying to get us to spend $2 million on AI surveillance in the parks. I hope that people vote against the AI surveillance camera initiative, but I do hope people vote yes and want to speak on item 61 when they show up to city council, because this is, in my opinion, a really good thing. And it also demonstrates that there are city council members that are actually listening to what you have to say. And that's great. A lot of people say, what the fuck's the point of me coming out? What is the point of me engaging at all? What is the point if nobody listens to me? And this shows that they do. And I think that if they do listen, that they should get the credit that they deserve. Thank you very much to City Council member Mike Siegel for sitting down for us for over an hour and a half. And thank you very much for listening to what Mackenzie and many other people in her coalition have had to say and actually implementing that into your agreement. It demonstrates that you're not just talking about this and just saying stuff to get reelected, but you actually give a shit. And regardless of any sort of areas where we disagree, I respect that a lot and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time. And as always, I hope you learned something. If you want to get involved with this at all, I'll leave links down below for anybody who wants to know when these city council member hearings are, and if you want to read any of these initiatives. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of How You're Potentially Not Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and today I'd like to talk about a very interesting thing called the Trust Act that Mayor in Austin, Mayor Pro Tem Chito Vela, and Councilman Mike Siegel were co-sponsors of. It's a pretty interesting piece of Kitty, what the why you're fucking distracting me, bro. What are you doing here? Clinty. Go over here. Go over here. Clinty, go away. Clinty, you can't, no. Clinty, you can't be sitting here. You can't be rubbing the microphone. You can't be biting my finger while I'm doing the video. That's not how this works. Clinty, you gotta go. Clinty, you gotta go over here. Clinty. Clinty! Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of How You're Potentially Not Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and I want to talk about an interesting resolution from the Austin City Council. This comes from City Councilman Mike Siegel and Chito Vela. I spoke with Mike Siegel for about an hour. We had a very interesting interview. Here. You want to be pet? You come over here. Bro, I have a schedule to keep. Come on.
Should I get Clinton? Is this Blackberry?
Can you make Clinton?
Clinton, come. Daddy needs some work. Come on. Come, Clinty. Come. Come. Clinty. Come over here.
Such a pain in the ass.
Clinty.
Such
Come.
a pain in the ass.
Clinty. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of You're Potentially Not Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossman, and today I wanted to discuss a resolution that comes from City Councilman Mike Siegel and Chito Vela from the Austin City Council. When we're talking about opposing these types of mass surveillance initiatives, whether it's Flock, LiveView, or any of these cameras getting installed that have used AI to make it easier for you to be surveilled everywhere that you go, it's really important to understand that it's not everybody in your city that wants them and pushes it through. There's going to be disagreement. We have 11 city council members, and there has to be some degree of agreement among them before something gets done. So I really want to highlight the work of Chito Vela and Mike Siegel. But do you, BlackBerry? Of course you don't. You're just going to fucking interrupt the video and fuck with the microphone. Get the fuck over here. Get over here. Get over here right now. You sit over here. The kitty goes over here. The kitty goes over here. Here. Kitty. Kitty.
Should I give him?